Bones, when did Bigfoot become cool?
Jeff Meldrum, the Patterson film, Shie Tonka, Big Brother in Lakota. Well, if you ask Bigfoot, he's always been cool.
Well, tonight, I want to try to pinpoint a moment when Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yowie, Yeti, all those things got kick-started into pop culture. Where we have plywood cutout signs in people's yards and morons wearing weird t-shirts.
Putting the cult in culture.
On an Everest Reconnaissance expedition in 1951, Eric Shipton snapped a photo that many saw as the first hard proof of the abominable snowman.
Yes, people don't realize how important that was.
On Barton Bones tonight, when Bigfoot became cool. This is the story of Shipton's snapshot felt round the world. Barton Bones geek out on classic horror. Every night they haunt the movie screen. It's plots, it's themes, it's scary memes, it's comedy twisted through your dreams. Barton Bones take you behind the screen. From the basement halls of the Haunted Mansion, it's Barton Bones tonight. Take yourself back to a time before the world was fully explored. In the 1920s, the Himalayas were a blank spot on the map. Just think about that. Those 1920s British Everest expeditions, it must have been something else. And think about yourself waiting at home, hearing the news from that alien, unexplored world. They didn't even know if humans could survive at that altitude. Would they find Shangri-La? And think what kids must have thought when they heard reports of the abominable snowman. A mistranslation, sure, but a cool one. Fast forward to when the Nepal side of Everest opens up. The British go back. It's 1951, launching a reconnaissance expedition to find a route to the top, to conquer Everest. Who would lead that expedition? Veteran explorer Eric Shipton. I'm a fan of mountain lore. I'm a fan of Shipton as well. For folks out there who don't know this guy's body of work, one of his books is called Blank on the Map. Just what we talked about. Just that very idea. And to me, that's the kind of exploration that I love. When people talk about explorers, probably most people think about Christopher Columbus, something like that. To me, I think about the people, the solo individuals whose only motivation is, I wonder what that is like, that blank spot on the map. To be somewhere that nobody else has ever been. When you read Shipton, that's kind of the track record. But he found something pretty unique during this 1951 Mount Everest reconnaissance expedition, and it's documented in his book, published by London, Hodder, and Stoughton, 1952. Bones, can you read for us this crucial section?
It was on one of the glaciers of the Melung Basin, at a height of about 19,000 feet, that late one afternoon, we came across those curious footprints in the snow, the report of which has caused a certain amount of public interest in Britain. We did not follow them further than was convenient, a mile or so, for we were carrying heavy loads at the time, and besides, we had reached a particularly interesting stage in the exploration of the basin. I have in the past found many sets of these curious footprints and have tried to follow them, but have always lost them on the moraine or rocks at the side of the glacier. These particular ones seemed to be very fresh, probably not more than 24 hours old. When Murray and Bordelon followed us a few days later, the tracks had been almost obliterated by melting. Sentencing, who had no doubt whatever that the creatures, for there had been at least two that had made the tracks, were yetis or wild men, told me that 2 years before, he and a number of other Sherpas had seen one of them at a distance of about 25 yards at Thionboj. He described it as half man, half beast, standing about 5 feet 6 inches with a tall pointed head. Its body covered with reddish brown hair, but with a hairless face. When we reached Kathmandu at the end of November, I had him cross-examined in Nepali. I conversed with him in Hindustani. He left no doubt as to his sincerity. Whatever it was that he had seen, he was convinced that it was neither a bear nor a monkey, with both of which animals he was, of course, very familiar. Of the various theories that have been advanced to account for these tracks, the only one which is in any way plausible is that they were made by a langur monkey. And even this is far from convincing, as I believe those who have suggested it would be the first to admit.
So for listeners, do you all remember what that print looks like? Bones, let's paint a picture in their minds. If you remember, he puts the ice axe next to the footprint to give a size reference. And the footprint itself is weird looking. In my opinion, describe that in one word, weird. Why does it have these misshapen or definitely like mist-sized toes? The large toe is like huge. And then like you've got these deformed small side toes. And like I'm interested to know, what's your first impression, Bones? When you look at that picture, is that real?
You know, if you want my honest opinion, what I thought of first.
We do.
I thought of going back to a time when I was playing baseball with my dad in the front yard.
Okay.
He had this old baseball mitt from the 1940s.
Oh boy.
That was like real big, like all thumb, and you know, just like it was just the weirdest thing. When I saw that footprint in the snow, that's kind of like what I thought of. I thought somebody may have pressed something down in there.
You think it's fake?
You know, first impression, I'm kind of questioning this thing.
It's interesting. My first question on that assumption there is, why make it look so weird if you're trying to hoax something? Wouldn't you try to think about what's going to be the most believable thing? And you would try to make it perfect, like a perfect human foot, but huge.
Well, you know, if they made it perfect, somebody could look at that and say, oh, that's just too perfect. It can't be real.
Sure.
So, you know, maybe they just decided to kind of...
There's a real artistry to this.
You know, there is an artistry to conning people.
Oh, boy. Let's see how people responded. The public responded. There is a newspaper article from the Indian Express, December the 7th, 1951.
Members of the British Himalayan expedition found and photographed footprints of the legendary abominable snowman during their recent assault on Mount Everest. According to reports reaching here from Kathmandu, Mr. Eric Shipton, 44-year-old leader of the expedition, is also reported to have met and talked with one hillman who had himself seen the mysterious semi-human gorilla-like monster which is supposed to inhabit the icy regions of the Himalayas. According to the Kathmandu reports, the tracks in the snow examined by Shipton's party were triangular and larger even than the snowshoes worn by members of the expedition. Mr. Shipton, who arrived in Delhi last week after a 3-month expedition to the Everest, left tonight by air for London. He is understood to be carrying with him photographs of the abominable snowman footprints, in addition to scores of other photographs taken by the 6-man expedition.
Isn't that interesting?
It is expected here that Mr. Shipton's photographs of the mysterious footprints will be examined in London by leading zoologists in an attempt to ascertain what kind of animal caused them. Legends among the mountain people of Tibet, Nepal, and Sikkim describe the abominable snowman as a large, fierce, and carnivorous beast, of which the large ones eat yaks and the smaller ones eat men.
There you go. I always have to throw that horror angle in there somewhere, right?
Indeed. You know, they are supposed sometimes to be white and sometimes black or brown. According to a legend, anyone who sees one will immediately drop dead. The famous British climber, Mr. Frank Smythe, during a climb on glacier over the Biped Valley, or the Valley of Flowers in the Himalayas in 1937, had reported that he had found the imprint of a huge naked foot, apparently of a biped, about 13 inches in length, with 5 toes in front and 2 on the back. Eric Shipton, also on a previous expedition of the Garhwal Himalayas, had reported finding tracks in the snow resembling those of a young elephant. Smythe himself believed the tracks might be those of a bear, with the edges melted away into a larger foot.
Fascinating. And it's really fascinating to me that this story broke before Shipton even got back to London. Here the interviewer saying, the journalist is saying, he's got photos with him and we're going to see them. But we can't even wait for the story. We can't wait for the photos to do the story. Like, this is such a big deal and it's so cool that we've got to do the story right now. On the idea that photos are forthcoming. Really cool. And it's funny, in one of the other interviews, Shipton made that very point. He was asked about, like, how surprised are you by this? How shocked were you to find these footprints? And he joked that it's more shocking that there's all kinds of people wanting to interview him about this stuff. And that's kind of a neat picture of really putting yourself back at this time. Because this wasn't hundreds of people going to thousands of people going to Everest like every day like we have now, right? This was that blank spot on the map. They had been there in the 20s for those expeditions, and then all of this political turmoil, right? So it's like you can go to Tibet, you can't go to Nepal, and now it's flip-flopped. You can go to Nepal and you can't go to Tibet. And this was just so few people had been on that mountain. You don't know what could be there. And that's an awesome portrait in time. But that's the moment. Shipton captures this photo in the 1951 reconnaissance expedition. There's a whirlwind of media and excitement about it. But what was the lasting impact from all of this? After Shipton's photo, that media responded, and therefore the money came forward in response too, in people wanting to find out about this. And it wasn't long before the Daily Mail, one of London's most popular news outlets, funded an expedition. Announced in 1953, it happened in 1954. Here's a snippet from the Buckingham Post, March 19th, 1954.
Down with 7 tons of gear. It includes movie cameras, walkie-talkie radios, everything but oxygen cylinders. An army of 300 coolies is required and tote this equipment from Kathmandu to the base of Everest for the best equipped scientific expedition ever sent to the Himalayas.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So we're conjecturing the moment Bigfoot became cool. How can you argue against this moment if people are putting behind the best equipped scientific expedition ever sent to the Himalayas because of these footprints? Remember, there is arguably no hard evidence of Bigfoot. This is before 1958 and the Jerry Crew and the whole naming of the word Bigfoot in the newspaper article. This is 51. This is like the first hard evidence of something mysterious like this. An ape-like creature, a biped, a large biped. And the response is just a frenzy. There's maybe the greatest picture of it, the Daily Mail funding this expedition. But beyond that, we're talking pop culture. When did Bigfoot pop into pop culture? Put the cult in culture? How about a 1955 play turned into a 1957 movie with Peter Cushing, The Abominable Snowman? And in the 2003 DVD of that movie, in the viewing notes, the writer, Nigel Neal, states that he was influenced by numerous reports of the Yeti that had appeared in the news at the time, quote, including discoveries of footprints by explorer Eric Shipton in 1951.
Wow.
So we're talking pop culture. What's more pop culture than a movie? The Shipton thing is a direct influence for the movie.
Oh, man. That is a lot of excitement.
Ready for a scare.
So if the Shipton footprint is so important, what else would round out a top 3 of the most important Bigfoot tracks of all time? 1958, Northern California. Jerry Crew and Front Page News coined the term Bigfoot with these infamous casts. 1969, Bossburg, Washington. The compelling Cripplefoot casts. Over 1,000 super fresh tracks with Renee DeHinden hot on the trail. The tracks have that wild appearance and fascinating follow-up studies by Grover Krantz. And who can forget 1967, Bluff Creek, the Patterson-Gimlin film, and the accompanying tracks to match that compelling footage for real fascinating comparative research on the gait of that lumbering behemoth, Patty. Now, back to the show. Bart and Bones!
Tonight.
And it reached all over the world, the Americas included. And here's one of the linchpin ways I see that it really kicked off a lot of the Bigfoot phenomenon as well. Renee DeHinden. People know that name? Renee DeHinden, one of the most influential Bigfoot researchers of all time. Think of the Patterson film. You mentioned that in our opening. Who was the person that bought the rights to that, played it all across the country, that was Dahinden. He knew those guys. He knew what they were doing. Dahinden was on the trail of Bigfoot ever since when? December the 3rd, 1953. He's working on a dairy farm outside of Calgary. And on the CBC Radio News, they announced this Daily Mail abominable snowman expedition. And Dahinden says to his employer, the dairy farmer, wouldn't it be amazing to go on something like that? Exactly. How fun would it be to do something like that? And he speaks of it like a switch. It was just turning a light switch on of, wow, that's amazing. Like, I am obsessed with this. And interestingly enough, the dairy farmer he was working for, he had worked on the BC coast. And he had knew something about some of the legends around there. And so when he said in response to Dahinden, he said, you don't have to go over there to the Himalayas. There's something like it in British Columbia. And Dahinden kind of kept pressing him for information and figuring this out. And before long, he starts on the trail of making this a serious thing, as he kind of states in his book, written with Don Hunter. At the time that he started messing around with this in the middle 50s, it was perceived by everyone, all the Westerners and stuff, as a Native American myth. And nothing more than that. And Dahinden is the first one to kind of start cataloging and researching sightings in a scientific manner. Okay, so those expeditions in the Himalayas happened. The Daily Mail one in 1954. There were several expeditions. One of the people involved with those was Peter Byrne. Another name that the American Bigfoot culture should know very well. The guy that did 1-800-BIGFOOT to call in your sightings. Very fun. And the guy that helped finance a lot of that stuff was Tom Slick, an American Texas oil millionaire. Well, they got wind of, hey, we should be doing an expedition in America, in the Pacific Northwest. And this is when Peter Byrne, Dahinden, these guys start to get together. John Green, the newspaperman. This is when they start comparing notes and working together for good and for ill. There was a lot of complexity, a lot of personalities, a lot of dynamic going on there.
A lot of hands in the cookie jar.
Oh, very much. But how much of this is spawned because Shipton takes a photo, because the Daily Mail does the abominable snowman stuff, because abominable snowman becomes a pop cultural thing before Bigfoot became a pop cultural thing? How much of that segued into the other? That's the argument. We're going to recap final thoughts and really pin down this answer of, is the Shipton photo the moment that Bigfoot permeated pop culture, and the net impact of that photo? But first, Bones, what you watching tonight?
Rise from the shadows, ready for fright.
Hey, what you watching?
Classic horror tonight.
Woo! Universal's 1941 movie Man-Made Monsters stars Lon Chaney Jr. in his first horror role as Dynamo Dan, the Electric Man, a sideshow attraction because of his strange immunity to electricity. Lionel Atwill is the mad scientist who subjects Chaney's kind, everyman character, to his maniacal designs. Legend has it, in 1936, Boris Karloff was originally selected for the role of Dan McCormick, with Bela Lugosi playing the at-will's part of the mad scientist. Instead, Chaney Jr. got his time to shine.
Isn't it interesting that here, Lon Chaney Jr. plays Dynamo Dan, and it leads into very shortly after he's getting the part of the Wolfman, and they're almost the same character. And one of the things that stands out about this movie to me is how good Chaney did with that identifiable, everyman, sympathetic type of role. It was kind of like a John Candy thing, right? Like everybody likes John Candy.
Right.
You watch a John Candy movie and it's just like, it's cool. It's like watching your friend on the screen. It's just somebody you can identify with, sympathize with, understand. Chaney pulled that off real good in this movie, Man-Made Monster. And that's part of what makes the Wolfman cool. Like Larry Talbot, in the later movies, it's funny, like all these Wolfman spawn-off things, like it's Larry Talbot becomes like this perpetual complainer. Like he just wants to share with everybody this woes of being the Wolfman. And like probably the height of that is the Abbott and Costello deal. But it's done well in the Wolfman. Like, don't forget the quality of the first one, 1941's Wolfman. A great movie. Chaney's role in that is dynamite. Just like Dynamo Dan.
Hands down.
And so it's really interesting, the parallels there. And then the other takeaway is, my gosh, why are people so obsessed with mad scientists at this time? We really had a thing about mad scientists in this late 30s, early 40s time period. Maybe it's the popularity of the Frankenstein movie started, but you can even go back before that, like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and different things. Like there's this even in literature, like we have this, the mad scientist was a real deal. And I wonder if media is going to kind of come back to that idea in a way with the whole AI thing, because like there's like this whole mad scientist thing is born out of like we're going too fast into the industrial age and like all of these experiments and stuff and electricity and things of that nature. Who knows? Obviously the atomic age was huge part of that. Godzilla movies, the whole deal. So anyway, Dynamo Dan, Man-Made Monster, a cool little snippet of time, a cool portrait in Chaney Jr.'s career. Give it a watch. You're going to enjoy it, Bones. Classic horrors. Final thoughts on Shipton's photograph. We mentioned this before. The first photograph, is this the first photograph of Bigfoot footprints? Certainly the first widespread in the media. And while stories abounded, the 20s expeditions brought back stories. That's where we have the name Abominable Snowman. So this concept existed. But prior to the Shipton photograph, I don't think people gave a lot of thought to this.
I think you're probably right.
Shipton mentioned in that passage that you read that he'd seen tracks like this before. And when those newspaper guys asked him when we joked about this, he thought it was more shocking that they're asking him all of these questions and, reporting them like this is, Channel 5 News breaking biggest thing you've ever heard in your life.
What do we see up on that mountain, Dynamo Dan? Going up that old tell it on the mountain. I saw the Yeti's footprints. Was it real? Was it not? It's hard to tell. But I think what was real was the pop effect that it had.
And why? And why did it pop? That's an
Why
interesting
did it
question
pop?
to me.
It's because it was something that was just on the fringe. It was beyond belief, and
Agreed.
it was proof of something that you cannot hold on to. It was like the proof of a dream.
It's the whole reason why this blank on the map concept is cool. You go explore some unknown place, you want to find cool unknown things. And that's why it pops. And the character of Bigfoot, how more cool can you be? You said in the beginning that Bigfoot's always been cool? Absolutely. Because here's this creature that can live in the harshest conditions, the most isolated, like an impenetrable, invincible monster. The abominable snowman. That's why the name is so cool. And it's like, wouldn't you want to be, there's times that wouldn't you want to be a Yeti?
Oh, count me in.
You don't need anything but just your arms and your legs, and you're invincible and you can do anything.
All I have to do is play a constant game of hide and go seek with these people.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. This undiscovered land, this ancient primal type creature. That's why it's so cool. It captures the imagination. You know, they can come back, that reconnaissance expedition, they can come back and the newspaper guys can interview them and say, sure, we found a great route up the mountain, and at 19,000 feet there's this call, and there's a basin below there, and then there's a ridge, and that's going to lead us up to 26,000 feet. And then we're going to be at the summit pyramid, and we're going to make the route from there. Is that going to interest everybody? It's going to interest some people. It's not going to interest people like, here's a bunch of footprints that look weird as can be. And what the heck is this thing? Something totally unlike anything we've seen at home. That's a cool story. So whether it's fake, real, a real misidentification, the Langer monkey, as he said, some type of a bear, a Himalayan bear, a deformed foot of a person, it's not unheard of that the natives there would walk barefooted.
They had a bunch of ice hanging to their toes. Could have been.
Oof. Whatever it may be, the undeniable fact is Shipton's photograph, it captured more than an impression in the snow. It's an impression in our minds of that icon, that untouchable, everlasting mystery that is absolutely personified in the Yeti. That's the lasting impact. Did it spawn or even create the entire Bigfoot phenomenon? Bones, you think this might be hoax? Did Shipton hoax a photograph to get himself on more expeditions? And then that inspired the imagination of all kinds of people, and those 1958 photographs, were they faked? The Patterson-Gimlin film, was that faked? Did it lead to this whole snowballing thing? Or did it inspire people to really look and be curious and say, hey, it's not without the bounds of possibility that we've all missed something. We think we are so advanced and we know everything on Earth. Check that for a moment. Maybe not. Maybe in remote places there is something. And whether that's fact or fiction, I think you gotta hold on to that feeling. Because that feeling is worth everything. You walk an old growth forest, you want to be thinking in the back of your mind, there's something out there that I don't know what it is. And there's no explanation. If Shipton gave us that, then he gave a great gift.
I have to agree with that. I have to agree. Whether or not it's real or not, I agree with you. I don't know if it really matters in this case, because in my opinion, the end result was in their favor. They got more. They got money. They got all kind of fame and fortune and.
Yeah, and being a fan of Shipton, I do have a hard time believing that there is anything at all nefarious about that. I think they saw something there. I don't think they would have wasted the effort to fake this. It's hard to say what that is. It is so weird looking. But yeah, I am not a fan of pessimistic thinking like that, to say that this was nefarious and they're faking this and that. Like you say, that's the net result is positive. We're all happy that happened. We've got great pop culture lore because of this happening. And who knows? Maybe there's an answer to this.
Maybe there is.
So, what we got on tap for next time?
Gritty realism is the last thing you'd expect to see in a 1931 movie. But Universal's Frankenstein has just that. Think of those opening scenes, robbing the graves, the first steps of the monster, and its brutal imprisonment. Yet the movie might have been remembered for so much more if it had stuck to its guns and offered an unchecked, grim portrait of humanity's injustices. Instead, we got an apologist, comic relief role to tamp down the horror. Old Baron Frankenstein poked aristocratic indifference and out-of-place humor in the eye of an otherwise picture of horror perfection. Next time, we discuss what almost ruined Frankenstein. You're tuned in to Barton Bones. For more of this and other classic horror content, visit infeedvideo.com. And don't forget to subscribe on Patreon to support the show, where its plots, its themes, its scary memes, Barton Bones take you behind the screams.